Few things in cinema can beat a good swerve or a reveal. And when it comes to cinematic twists and turns, nothing can ever really top a good unmasking. Seeing a mask lifted off, peeled back, forced off, or even a metaphorical mask slip for the more philosophical amongst us can turn a good movie into a great movie when done correctly. Of course, when bungled or forced, that same unmasking can turn a good movie into an absolute turd of a picture as well, but we're not focusing on those today. Sometimes that shock is one that plays with emotions, other times it's one that's just come from way out of left field, other times it's almost comedic because it's so nuts, and other times still, it's something that we've all seen coming. Either way, all of the unmaskings manage to be memorable, hard-hitting moments. I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 movie unmaskings that shocked everyone. Number 10, Rorschach, Watchman. On the whole, pretty much every member of the Watchman has their own set of particular issues and traumas, but none of them are quite as unhinged as Jackie Earle Haley's Rorschach. One of the most memorable moments in Zack Snyder's movie adaptation of Alan Moore's beloved graphic novel was the moment where Rorschach has his mask pulled off. Haley sells it like it's the biggest deal in the world, with his tough-as-nails anti-hero exploding into a ball of emotion, and that's because to Rorschach, that unmasking is the biggest thing in the world. After his digging into the comedian's death results in the police hunting him down, it's here that the outnumbered Walter Kovacs has his mask pulled off as he screams, "Gimme back my face!" It's much cooler when he does it. The rage-fueled plea hammers home the point that he very much sees his ink-blotted mask as his real identity, and that Walter Kovacs is the real mask for this brutal vigilante. Number 9, ScrappyDoo, Scooby-Doo, the movie. As a family-friendly ball of horror-tinged entertainment, 2002 Scooby-Doo the movie is an absolute blast. Like, seriously, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. It's awesome. With Mystery Inc. having been reformed on the ominously titled Spooky Island, the film initially sets up Rowan Atkinson's Emil Mondavarius as the big bad of the piece. For anyone familiar with the Scooby-Doo IP though, you'll be well aware that there's always a twist lurking just around the corner. And in Scooby-Doo the movie, that is once again the order of the day. The twist here though is that Mondavarius is really an evil robot controlled by none other than ScrappyDoo. The reason for Scrappy's scheme here is that Scrappy Dabby Doo had got the hump after he was unceremoniously booted out of Mystery Inc. for A, being an annoying little brat, and B, urinating on Daphne. Puppy power? More like puppy. Number 8, Rex Racer, Speed Racer. Having been in development for a ridiculous 16 years, hopes were high when Speed Racer zoomed to the silver screen in 2008. And while the reception to the movie wasn't entirely positive, the film was admittedly never anything less than a visual delight. With Emil Hirsch's Speed starting to believe that his rival-turned-mentor Racer X is really his long-dead brother Rex Racer, the middle act of the film sees an enraged Speed confront the mysterious masked Racer X as he looks to find out the truth for himself. What was initially shocking here is that Matthew Fox's unmasked Racer X isn't Speed Racer's brother. It's a jarring moment that went against the established narrative of such feel-good movies of years gone by, and it was something that obviously took Speed Racer aback. Well, until the closing moments of Speed Racer threw that unmasking on its head by revealing that yes, Racer X is indeed Rex Racer. Courtesy of a timely flashback, we see that Rex faked his own death, underwent extensive plastic surgery, and has maintained his secret in order to protect his family and to protect his beloved sport of fast cars and competition. Number 7, Darth Vader, Return of the Jedi. For 2.5 movies, fans had seen Darth Vader as an unrelenting, clinical badass who was just the most imposing figure in the entire galaxy. So, when Vader was finally unmasked during Return of the Jedi's final act, it came as a huge shock to see the visage that laid underneath Vader's iconic mask. This strong, unstoppable force of nature with otherworldly powers and a lightsaber was exposed to be a weak, frail, damaged old man who was on death's door. Granted, part of the reason for Vader's final form can be explained by the Emperor's lightning blasts doing a number on dear Darth, but Vader's state is down to more than just being on the receiving end of his boss's wrath. As the years went on in real life, we'd obviously get to see the full extent of Anakin Skywalker's injuries and transformation in Revenge of the Sith. Before seeing Hayden Christensen's Anakin all burned and full of rage though, it was hugely shocking to see the state of Sebastian Shaw's Anakin when Darth Vader's helmet was removed for the first time in Return of the Jedi. Number 6, Roy Burns' Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. Few masked figures are as iconic as the Friday the 13th's Jason Voorhees. Now, Jason's face had already been viewed at several points over the years, but Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning was the most shocking unmasking of the lot. We'd seen young Jason in the first Friday the 13th movie, we'd seen the disfigured adult Jason have his burlap sack removed in Part 2, we'd seen Jason lose his hockey mask in Part 3, and the unmasked Jason would have his face carved up by Corey Feldman in the final chapter. Why the A New Beginning unmasking stands out from the pack then is a major shocker, in that audiences were left with their jaws on the floor that it wasn't actually Jason underneath the mask. No, instead it was a Jason doppelganger called Roy Burns. Yeah, you can see why this dude didn't quite have the same staying power. For those eager for their Jason fix, thankfully the hulking Voorhees would be brought back to life a year later when Tommy Jarvis digs up Jason's corpse and accidentally brings him back to life in Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives. Number 5. Peter Parker, Spider-Man Far From Home. Tom Holland's Spider-Man has so far been an absolute triumph. Mixing teenage naivete, iron will, a whole lot of heart, and that famed Parker look, and that glorious MCU flick had a massive unmasking moment during the film's credits sequence. That bombshell was Quentin Beck pulling the uber prick move of leaking the news of Spider-Man's secret identity to the Daily Bugle. Never want to sit on such a juicy story, J. Jonah Jameson is seen spilling the proverbial beans in the most public of forums. And just like that, Peter Parker as Spider-Man is now public knowledge. Rarely in any medium has Peter's big secret been made so public, and when it has been, it always ends horribly. Cough, one more day, cough. And it's a move that nobody expected to see in the MCU. Period, let alone so early in Holland's run as the Wallcrawler. To add further shock, this scene was then followed up by the reveal that Nick Fury and Maria Hill had been replaced by Skrulls during the entire movie. Thinking about it now, pretty much most of the story reveals actually happened once the movie was technically over. Number 4. Davians Translator, Mission Impossible 3. The Mission Impossible franchise is one that's built on unmaskings. Across the 6 films to date, and with 2 more on the way, so many times we've seen Mission Impossible swerve its audience by revealing that somebody is wearing the face of another person. And not in a Nick Cage and John Travolta face-off kind of way, but more a secret carbon copy of someone's face as a means to serve as the perfect ruse or disguise. To hone in on just one of the franchise's great unmaskings is a tall order, but likely the biggest standout on this front comes in the opening moments of Mission Impossible 3. As that threequel opens, we see Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt and his wife Julia strapped to a couple of chairs at the behest of no-good arms dealer Owen Davian. With Davian threatening to kill Julia unless Ethan gives up the location of the rabbit's foot, Hunt gives the bad guy what he wants, only to then see Davian put a bullet in his wife. It's a stark, shocking way to open Mission Impossible 3, although once the credits are out of the way, we get the reveal that the person who was killed wasn't actually Julia Hunt at all, instead it was Davian's poor translator. Number 3. Bucky Barnes, Captain America, The Winter Soldier. For those familiar with the world of Marvel Comics, it was a no-brainer that the Winter Soldier and Bucky Barnes were one and the same in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. For those not familiar with the funny books, and even for those who were, the reveal of Bucky as the metal-armed, brutal masked assassin was something special indeed. In Captain America: The First Avenger, we'd seen Bucky fall to his apparent death, just another sad casualty of that war. So when a mysterious and shady figure surfaced in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, the last person in mind as being behind this persona was Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes, who died back in 1943. Having already got the better of Captain America once, then bested Black Widow, not to mention took down Nick Fury, the tension builds as we get another round of Winter Soldier vs. Cap. In the ensuing tussle this time though, despite Winter Soldier getting the better of the fight again, Cap manages to pull off his opponent's face covering. Then, in one of the greatest moments in the entire run of MCU movies, there's a chilling silence as the audience and Steve Rogers realise that this monstrous human weapon is somehow, somewhere, Bucky Barnes. Number 2. The Phantom of the Opera. When looking back through cinema history, it's safe to say that 1925's The Phantom of the Opera was the first time that film fans were really treated to a proper shocking unmasking. Up until that point of Rupert Julian's movie, all we've seen from the mysterious Phantom is from behind the mask. But then, midway through the picture, Mary Philbin's Christine goes against the grain and shockingly pulls the mask directly off the Phantom's face, revealing an angered, twisted vision of terror. What made this unmasking so particularly impactful is in how the Phantom's face was so jarringly opposite to the mask that we'd been presented with up until then. The mask was a largely expressionless image that was tinged with an element of sympathy and empathy, and thus that only served to make the big reveal of Phantom's real form all the more powerful. There have clearly been so many shocking unmaskings in cinema over the subsequent near century since The Phantom of the Opera was released in 1925, but none of them can ever take away the Phantom's honour of being the very first to pull such a move. Number 1. Michael Myers' Halloween. Along with Black Christmas, John Carpenter's Halloween is seen as the launching point for what would become known as the slasher subgenre. And while Carpenter's 1978 movie is a tense, taut affair, it could be argued that nothing is as horrifying as the film's opening scene reveal. As Halloween opens, we have a POV shot of someone picking up a mask. From there, this unknown figure heads upstairs and butchers a young woman before walking out onto his front lawn and being unmasked. It's only then that we see the mortifying truth that this murder has been carried out by a knife-wielding, angelic-faced 6-year-old boy. For the rest of Halloween and its subsequent sequels, there would only be fleeting, super rare glimpses of Michael without his mask. But that initial opening scene unmasking is one of the most jarring, hard-hitting unmasking moments in the history of horror and the history of cinema period.